So back in April of this year, I plunked a chunk of money to get that behemoth super telephoto lens behind me. It's the Sony 400 to 800 millimeter lens, and when I pair it with my Sony A1 II, it makes getting tack sharp action bird photos easier than I've ever experienced. Now, as soon as I got the lens, I drove out to meet my good buddy Matt Kliskowski for a sunrise bird shoot with the intent of breaking it in. Fortunately, there was this one especially hungry reddish egret who generously hunted for fish for like over an hour while we took literally thousands of photos of it. Now, I've already shared some of the photos from this shoot on Instagram, but I thought it'd be fun to do a good old fashioned post processing video where I walk you through my editing workflow to take this photo from this to this. Some of the things I show you will be pretty straightforward, but I'm willing to bet that there'll be at least a few tricks that you might not have considered, including a bonus tip that I'm saving for the end. It's going to be a lot of fun, so let's dive in. All right, so here we are in Lightroom, and I wanted to show you some of the details of the image before we dive into the edit stack. Now, like I mentioned, I took this in mid-April of this year, and also, like I mentioned, I used my Sony A1 Mark II, and this was the very first time I got to use my brand new Sony 400 to 800 millimeter lens. Now, in terms of the EXIF information, you can see that I was fully zoomed in at 800 millimeters, and this bird was pretty far away, so I was very grateful for that extra reach. I was shooting at ISO 800, f8, and 1/3200th of a second. The reason why I jacked up the ISO is because I wanted to get as fast of a shutter speed as I could so that I can really freeze in all of this action, the way the egret was lunging into the water and the way the kind of droplets were kind of exploding around its head. And so now that you understand a bit more about how I expose the image, let's go ahead and enter the edit stack. Now, it goes without saying that I'm using Lightroom. That's what I use for this channel. It's what I use for all of my photos. But everything I show you can also be done in Lightroom Classic. Both versions of Lightroom have the same editing tools, so there's nothing that I'm going to show you here that you can't do in Lightroom Classic. So the first thing that I want to do is I actually want to apply denoise. And you can see by zooming in here, I can even zoom in a bit more, that there is some noise. It was ISO 800, and even though the Sony A1 Mark II is very capable at these high ISOs, there's still noise. So there's a reason why I want to apply denoise right away, and it has to do with what we call the AI edit order of operations. Now, if you don't know what that is, no worries. I'm going to link to a deep dive video at the end of this one. I highly recommend you check it out. So let's go ahead. We're going to scroll down to the detail panel here, and I'm going to click on denoise. Now you can see if I zoom in, I like to zoom in. This is too close. Let me go back to 100%. I like to zoom into an area where I could see where the noise was, but also I can see my primary subject with all of its detail. The reason for that is this is where I go ahead and I adjust the amount. So I bring this to 0, and then I slowly build in the noise reduction. So somewhere right around maybe here, around 32, maybe 35, somewhere around here looks good, where I have really good noise reduction and I'm still retaining all of that really great detail. Now, for those of you that remember the legacy way of doing denoise, this is a huge advantage for two reasons. First, we're now applying denoise directly to the raw file instead of creating a whole new DNG file. So that, to me, that was one of the things that honestly really annoyed me, was having my raw and then a separate DNG. But the other thing, and this is super huge, is that when that DNG file was created, whatever amount of denoise you had set, that was baked into the image. You couldn't adjust it the way that I just showed you. And so to me, that makes this new workflow so much better, specifically for my needs, and I know for many other people. All right, so with denoise out of the way, we can kind of start adjusting overall edits. And looking at the histogram, everything looks good. We're mostly in the midtones here, all of our data for the image. So that gives us some room to have some fun with contrast. Now, back in the day, one of the first things I would do would be to click on auto, and it does a good job, but I actually prefer using the adaptive color profile. I think it does a much better job of applying kind of targeted edits to the photo. So I'm going to click here, and you might be like, yeah, this is way too bright, and I agree with you. Fortunately, there is an amount slider, and so I can dial this back. I'll start at basically 0 and, increase it to right around here. That looks good. Now, in terms of white balance, if I go ahead and change this from as shot to say daylight, I mean, you can see that it's pretty much, the camera pretty much nailed it. from here to here. So I'm just going to stick with as shot. I'm actually really happy with it. And now that we're at a good kind of starting place, this is where I'm going to go ahead, enter crop. I'm going to make sure that I retain my original aspect ratio and keep it locked. And I'm going to crop in. So something right around maybe here. Bring it over a little bit, somewhere right there. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Actually, let me go ahead. I'm going to bring it back up and get a little bit of the blue back on the very top of the frame. Now, because I applied this adaptive color profile, there isn't too much that I need to do with these sliders here. I mean, I still can drop the exposure just a bit, maybe increase the highlights, maybe drop the white point. I'm looking here. Let me see. Actually, I'll bring up the white point. Let's open up. Actually, no, I want to drop the black point. This is kind of how I edit. Like I'll look and like, somewhere here looks good. And honestly, that's the way I recommend that you should edit. Do not look at the sliders here. Keep your eye on your image, put the cursor on the slider, and then just move. But make sure you're looking at the image. Because if you're looking at the slider, you have no idea what's going on with your image. And I know that people do that because you get so focused on the numerical value and the position of the slider, which is, it's just kind of arbitrary, to be completely honest. What you should be most focused on is the impact of the slider on your image. And the only way that you can see that is if you're looking at the image and not the slider. So let's see here the overall impact of the light sliders here. Yep, good job here. But now what I want to do is apply contrast. And I've said this many times, I do not use the contrast slider, or I very rarely do, because it's kind of like a predefined algorithm of how it works. I like having control of contrast using the tone curve here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop 3 points at these intersections here. I'm going to drop the shadow area down to kind of give me a bit more punch in the shadow areas. Let's bring up some of the highlight detail, something like this. And then let's adjust midtones. So maybe something like that. Then let's go ahead. I like to kind of kick up the black point toe. So you can see here, look kind of in this dark area here. As I bring this up, what we're doing is we're introducing gray, and ultimately we would introduce white if we bring it all the way to the top. I don't want that. I just want a little bit of, it kind of softens the contrast, especially in the shadow area. So by introducing gray in the black point, this kind of looks really nice. Now, when you make adjustments to the point curve here, it adds a bit of a saturation boost, which is why we have this refined saturation slider. You can see here, look at the image. If I bring it to the left and then to the right really quickly, especially in the blues, you can see the way it kind of gets a little bit more saturated. Now, I don't want it to be at 0 because it looks like it loses a bit of a nice impact. So I usually find right around halfway, right around 50 is usually good. Now let's move down a little bit here. And one of the things that I love also applying, I usually do this pretty early on as well, is this blue primary saturation slider. If you are a Lightroom user and you do not see this panel here, it's because it's hidden by default. You can access it by clicking on this try dot here on the right toolbar, and then just select show color calibration. The histogram is also off by default. I highly recommend you turn that on if you haven't already. So these two are very important. Now I've got a video that walks through this entire panel, the color calibration panel. So I'll leave a card right up above, but all I'm going to do is take this slider here and pop it. You can see, watch, if I go all the way to the right, it definitely is strong, but it's not like it is like totally ruined. Like watch, if I take, for example, in color mixer here, let's go ahead and adjust saturation for blue. And I pop that. You see how that is terrible. But if I go down here to color calibration and I increase this blue primary saturation, again, it's strong, but it's not nearly as bad as using the color mixer. And so usually what I like to do is just add a bit of a pop here with this particular slider. In this case here, I'm also going to do a saturation pop with the red primary saturation. So something like this. And then let's see the effect. So you can see it's really, really coming together. Actually, I'm going to dial back the blue. It is a bit too strong. So something like that. Now I want to bring out details in the egret. Like I want to have it a little bit sharper. To do that, what I'm going to do is go to the masking panel, and then I'm going to use the adaptive subject mask. And you can see what a great job it does of selecting the bird. Now, it did also select some areas behind the bird. So if that's something you want to get rid of, you want to address, easiest way to do it is to click on subtract and then select brush, and then make sure flow and density are maxed out. And I also recommend selecting this auto mask checkbox. That'll basically sample whatever the brush lands on, and it'll make it easier to get more of kind of like a refined edge. So no, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I just want to show you if, this is something that bothers you, this is how you would take care of it. So something like that, and then maybe even over there, just to clean up the mask. Now, I always recommend renaming the mask. So here we're going to call this egret. Just makes it easier to identify if you're working with multiple masks. Then let's go ahead. Under effects, we're going to apply texture. And actually, let's go ahead and zoom in. So click here, and just so we can see the bird. And then let's increase texture. And again, if you're not sure what these sliders do, my best recommendation is just to move it up and down. And eventually you'll kind of land on an area here, like right around here. It doesn't even take that much, where you get a nice pop of texture. All right, let's go ahead, continue on. As I look at the photo though, this spot here is driving me crazy. So let's go to the remove panel. I don't even need to use generative AI for this one. Let's make a big brush, something like this, and just get rid of that there. Okay, that looks better. Now you'll notice that our AI edit status icon here has illuminated yellow. That means that we've invalidated one of the AI tools that we applied. Again, this is part of the order of operations I mentioned. Don't worry, I've got a video that I'll link to at the end that'll explain this. But what I want to do is click on this update all button to get all of the AI tools in a good state, which that's all it took. Now that I think about it though, I do want to apply another mask. I want to kind of separate the bird from the background a bit. And the way that I'm going to do that is go back to masking here. I'm going to select the try dot next to the mask group, and I'm going to select duplicate and invert mask. You can see pretty much everything but the egret is now selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to dehaze and add a little bit of a dehaze. Not too much, just something like this. And you can see all it's doing is it's just making the egret pop a bit more off the background. Now, once again, I want to go ahead here and update the mask just so that we are in a good state. Now, we can call it good right now. We can apply some sharpening, maybe a tiny little vignette, and be off to the races. But I sometimes like to have fun creatively, like using the tools beyond just correcting things and maybe adding a bit of a color pop. So let me show you what I mean by that. We're going to stick in the masking panel here, and I'm going to create a new mask with a radial gradient. I'm going to go ahead and zoom way out, like 12%. And I'm going to make a gigantic radial gradient mask. And I'm going to put it like right around here. Maybe make it even larger and move it out here. And I really want a large feather. All right. With that done, I'm going to click on fit. And now what I want to do is I want to create kind of like a warm glow, because this was around sunrise or shortly after sunrise. So the light was very, very pleasant. It was very soft, and I want to accentuate that. So I'm going to go ahead down here to the effects section, and I'm going to add a negative dehaze. And watch, you see this kind of soft glow effect that appears. So I usually like to start pretty strong, because this helps me position that radial gradient. Then I'm going to zoom back out again, and I'm going to move it a little bit further in so that it starts to play with the wing of the bird. So right around here, let's fit that back in. And now what I want to do is I want to simulate warm sunlight. So to do that, I'm going to go to color, and I'm going to increase the temperature, and you can see this beautiful warm sunlight. You see how it just looks really nice and warm. We can also add a bit of a saturation pop, and it looks like, it looks really nice. It also does a really nice job. The entire top of the image was starting to get a bit too punchy. So adding this negative dehaze softens that a bit. So you have a little bit of it over here. It creates a sense of depth and transition in terms of light to shadow. And now what I can do is go back to dehaze. And if it's too strong, I can bring it back a bit. Or I can keep it fully strong and then use the overall amount slider of the mask and dial it back here. So different ways to approach it, or you can make it even stronger, which that's way too strong. But just want to show you that there are different ways to approach this. Let's go ahead and rename this. So I'm going to call this Sunrise Glow. And then I'm going to rename this one Background. And so you can see, watch. I mean, do you see what a beautiful job, especially on the top of the wing here, what a beautiful job it does. And so now if we go back here and I press the backslash key, this is the image that we started with. This is what we edited. We're not fully done yet because the last thing that I want to do is apply a bit of sharpening. So under the detail section here, you can see there's a default amount that's already applied. But what I like to do is zoom in over here, look at the egret at 100%. And one of the tips that I've seen some other photographers use with sharpening is the recommendation is to take the radius slider to 0.5 and the detail slider all the way to 100. And then, like always, press and hold on the Option key or Alt key on Windows while dragging the amount slider. This does a good job of letting you see the effect of sharpening. So right around here looks good. Then zoom out, press and hold the Option or Alt key, and drag on the masking slider until basically you just have an outline of all of the high contrast edges. That way you know that sharpening is being applied only where it should be. And so again, if we hit the backslash key, that's the original cropped image. This is our edit. And I think it looks awesome. Now I mentioned that I have one bonus tip for the end, and we are here. And this is optional. This is something that you can take it or leave it, but I at least want to show you why I'm adding it in this workflow video. So you can see, the thing is, you saw the original uncropped image. This was the position of the egret in the frame. And for me, I wish I had just a bit more space. Not much, but a bit more space to the left and the bottom of the frame. Now, fortunately, we have a tool that can help with that. So what I'm going to do is right click, go to Edit in Photoshop, and send this into Photoshop. All right, so here we have the image in Photoshop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the crop tool over here. I'm going to make sure that my ratio is set to original ratio. And then I'm going to make sure that for fill over here, I'm going to select Generative Expand. And then I'm going to drag from the bottom left bumper here out. And I'm visualizing how much extra space I need. Not much, something like that looks good. And now what I'll do is I'm going to click on Generate. I'm not going to type anything here in this Firefly bar. I'm just going to click on Generate. And so you can see that little bit of extra space, to me, I don't know, it just looks good. It looks better. It gives me a little less anxiety by having the bird so close. Now, I'm fine with it without the Gen Expand. It was fine. Like if we look here, totally fine. But over here though, you can see it just, I don't know, it has a bit more breathing room. And of course we have these different variations here. So choose the one that you like the most. This one actually looks good. I can also go ahead and click on this Enhance Detail button. And that's going to basically double the resolution of this area. That's going to add even more detail to that area that was introduced into the image, which is always a good thing. Now, if I want to bring this back into Lightroom, what I need to do is not just save. It's not enough to save. You want to click on Close. So if I click on Close, I'll get this Save dialog. Make sure you click on Save. That'll save it and close the document. And then it'll bring you back to Lightroom here. You can see on the top left that we're importing from Photoshop. And if I click on Grid, you can see that it's stacked both images together. Let's go ahead and ungroup the stack just so that we can see both images side by side. You can see if I open up the original, again, this is our edited image, and this is with Gen Expand. Totally up to you. Like I do like having a bit of that extra space. This is also fine, but I don't know, this just feels a little bit better. And honestly, that's what I love the most about Lightroom and Photoshop is that it provides all of the tools that I need to get as creative as I want. I can either just be super clinical and fix the tone and color of my image, or I can just simulate a nice sunrise glow. I can add a bit of extra space. All of the tools are here at your disposal if you want to use them. Now, these are only a small subset of the tools in Lightroom. If you want to learn everything there is to know about Lightroom for desktop, mobile, and web, please check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Now, I also mentioned that I have this deep dive video all about the AI edit order of operations. Please don't skip it. Please take the time to watch from start to finish. It's very important and it'll help you with your editing experience using Lightroom. Of course, if you found this video helpful, thumbs up is always appreciated, as is clicking on the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone.